Welcome to Beyond Small Talk. Grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's get into today's conversation. Last episode, I left you with a question that had been bothering me for quite a while. Why am I angry? And we talked about not angry at this, yelling at people type angry, not throwing things angry, but this frustration that quietly sits in the background, the feeling that something isn't quite right, the feeling of looking for something or someone to blame when the first thing goes wrong. And I've been sitting with that question ever since we brought it up in that first episode. And I've started to understand part of what is underneath it. I don't think it's anger. I think it was resentment. And man, that's tough to say out loud because when I hear the word resentment, I picture someone bitter, someone angry at the world. I certainly don't picture myself. But the more honest I've become with myself, the more I've realized that resentment doesn't always look angry. Sometimes it looks like disappointment. Sometimes it looks like exhaustion. Sometimes it looks like impatience. And sometimes it looks like a man quietly believing he should be further along by now. And that one hits close to home because there are many parts of my life that are going really well. There are things I'm deeply grateful for, people I love, meaningful work, friendship, opportunities I never imagined I would have. And yet there are moments where I catch myself thinking, I thought I'd be further along by now. Maybe you felt that too. Maybe you thought you'd be married by now. Maybe you thought you'd have children by now. Maybe you thought your marriage would feel easier or more fun. Maybe you thought you'd feel financially secure, have closer friendships. Your anxiety would be gone by now. Maybe you thought you'd be sober by now. Maybe you thought life would feel different by now. And then another year goes by, life isn't terrible, but it isn't matching the timeline you imagined either. And that's a strange place to live, isn't it? Because you're grateful but frustrated, you're hopeful but tired, you're moving forward but somehow feeling behind, older, slower. And I think that's where resentment quietly starts growing, not because life is bad, but because life isn't following the story we wrote in our heads. And I think many of us think we have a contract with life that nobody ever signed. I think many of us think we have a contract with life that nobody ever signed. Mine was go to school, find someone, get married, have children, build a career, save for retirement, be a good person. And somewhere in there, I quietly assumed if I do my part, life will do its part. But life never signed that contract. And that realization can feel unfair because it's not just disappointing, it can feel like betrayal, not betrayal by a person, betrayal by reality itself, by life, betrayed by luck. And honestly, that's where I feel like I get stuck sometimes because when someone tells me to let go of expectations, we sure have heard that from a lot of people, part of me pushes back. If I accept reality, am I giving up? If I lower expectations, am I failing? If I stop fighting, am I settling? Well, these are real questions for me because I've spent most of my life trying to build, trying to improve, trying to become better. Athlete, student, engineer, executive, a son, a husband, a leader. But the more I think about it, the more I realize that acceptance and resignation are not the same thing. Acceptance says, this is where I am. Resignation says, this is all I'll ever be. And those are very different conversations. I can still dream. I can still work, I can still hope, build, but maybe I don't need to be angry at reality because it isn't unfolding according to my preferred timeline or schedule. I'm 42 now. And maybe one of the strangest things about getting older is realizing that time does not slow down while we figure ourselves out. Parents age, friends move away, loved ones die, bodies change, opportunities close, and life keeps moving whether I'm paying attention to it or not. And that realization doesn't make me hopeless, it makes me careful because I don't know how many summers I have left with people I love. Yeah, that sounds dark and not fun, but it gives me perspective for sure. And maybe that's why these conversations matter because I don't want to spend another 10 years outrunning things that need to be understood. One practice I've been experimenting with lately is gratitude. And before you roll your eyes, trust me, I get it. Gratitude can sound cheesy, especially when life isn't going according to plan. I don't think gratitude erases pain. I don't think gratitude solves resentment. I think gratitude balances perspective because resentment has a way of taking over the mind. Once my brain locks onto what's missing, it starts playing it over and over again in my head. That timeline didn't happen, the expectation life didn't meet, the fear that maybe it never will. And if I'm not careful, those thoughts become the only story I hear about myself in my head. So I started writing down my gratitudes daily. Not because life is perfect, it sure isn't, but because life is not only disappointments. There's love, there's friendship, there's health, there are opportunities. There are ordinary moments that are easy to overlook. And I noticed something interesting. Writing them helped. Saying them out loud helped more. Sharing them with another person helped even more. Man, that feels awkward to admit because it feels cheesy. It feels unmanly. It feels like bragging, and we don't like bragging. But I don't think it's bragging. I think it's witnessing. Sometimes another human being helps us believe our own life is good simply by being there, listening to me saying my gratitudes out loud, validating by a hell yeah, so proud of you, man, or just a simple nod. Having someone to say my gratitudes to has done wonders for me. Another practice I've been trying is asking myself, what expectations am I holding that reality never agreed to? And of course, that question doesn't solve the problem either, but it gives me clarity. The clarity doesn't always remove pain, but it often prevents confusion from turning into resentment. How do I do that? I do that by going beyond small talks with myself first, in my journals, in my thoughts, in this podcast. And boy, if I had another person or two to talk about the reality of my circumstances and help me evaluate whether my expectations are aligned with them or not, how much more clarity would I be able to bring to my life? I certainly didn't say how much more happiness I would bring into my life because I've learned talking about expectations versus reality doesn't necessarily mean happiness after, but it can certainly mean more clarity, less confusion, less me being lost in my own head with my own thoughts. It can mean more peace, which brings me to another question. Who do I actually have to go beyond small talk with? What if your answer is nobody? What then? Most men don't think about friendships this way. I have friends I've known for decades. We have watched sports together, had drinks together, been there for weddings and funerals, and yet there are conversations I've never tried to have with them. Not because they wouldn't listen, because I never thought to ask, never felt comfortable. It's not a guy thing to do. So maybe the person is already in your life. And like me, you just haven't given it a chance. Maybe you've simply never invited them into that part of your life. Here's another disclaimer. Maybe going beyond small talk doesn't have to mean a 3-hour conversation about feelings. Maybe it looks like stepping out onto the balcony during a halftime of a football game with a cup of coffee and saying, "Man, work has been rough lately. I'm worried. I don't think I'm showing up at home the way I want to." Then talk for a few minutes and go back to the game. Oh, I bet that sounds ridiculous on the surface. Why the heck would I ruin a perfectly beautiful Saturday, cold beer and sports on TV with my buddy at my house and the ladies out shopping to talk about work issues? That's the problem. At what point am I just having cold beer Saturdays with my buddy to escape life? Hey, if if all is good, nothing on your mind, nothing bothering you, hell yeah, man, enjoy the day. Don't bring work up. Good on you. I love those days. I want more of them. But from my experience, that ain't every Saturday. So then the question becomes, do I just continue and have my regular off days on my couch and TV, or my gym days with my whey protein shake, or another day of following my wife shopping while on the phone the whole time, another Saturday at the baseball field barely paying attention to my kid, and just run away from the issue in my head? Or can I have all of those real life wonderful activities and open a 10-minute window on my balcony and get something off my chest and let a friend help process some thoughts? Because going beyond small talk isn't to replace life or replace fun. Maybe going beyond small talk needs to be integrated into life. Because if the only place I can talk honestly is in a therapist's office, something feels incomplete. Seriously. Therapy has helped me tremendously. I still go. But surely human connection was meant to be bigger than 50 minutes in an office, right? It's gotta be. Maybe we're all looking for a few people who know us, really know us, not just love us, know us. My mom loves me. She no longer knows me. My dad loves me. He no longer knows all of me. My wife loves me, but maybe she's not the person to go beyond small talk with about everything in my life. I need people who know me to go beyond small talk with routinely enough in my life. So let's take that all the way back to the top. I said all of that to go back to resentment doesn't just stay inside. Eventually, it leaks. Marriages, it leaks into friendships, into work, health, into people we love the most. And that's when that happens, we no longer just carry pain, we create pain. And that comes with real costs. Connection gets lost, trust gets damaged, people get hurt. And sometimes the hardest part is realizing the person standing in front of us was never really the source of what we were carrying. So maybe the question isn't, why am I angry? Maybe the better question is, what am I carrying that I have never named? And that's the question I've been sitting with lately. And that's the one we'll keep exploring together. Until next time, let's go beyond small talk. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I would love to hear your thoughts on today's conversation. Where in your life do you need to go beyond small talk right now? Maybe with your partner, maybe with a friend, a family member, or maybe just with yourself. Leave a comment, send a message, or share this episode with someone who came to mind while listening. And if these conversations are meaningful to you, consider subscribing and following the podcast. As always, thank you so much for being part of the conversation.